Thanks for joining us for this look at the best original reporting from KPBS News this week. I'm Matt Hoffman in for Maya Tribulsi. Pride festivals are seeing their insurance costs skyrocket as threats of protest and violence continue to grow. What that means for local events. Renting in America's finest city, it's now more expensive than San Francisco. Why prices keep going up and up. And a multi-million-dollar makeover. We're getting a tour of the newly reopened Lafayette Hotel up in North Park. We begin with this week's top story. A summer heat wave is sweeping through San Diego County. There's a high heat risk warning for some inland areas. Temperatures are forecasted in the 90s and up to 120 degrees in the deserts this weekend. I went out with KPBS video journalist Jacob Ayer to see what people are doing to keep their cool.
With the crazy sun and heat, it's very nice.
The pool at the Cameron Family YMCA in Santee is one place where East County residents are finding some relief.
Tomorrow my son, he wants to come, my oldest son, he wants to come with her sister here to play with the water.
He throws me in the pool a lot.
We're just gonna stay coming here every day till the heat goes a little bit, you know.
But I'm thinking of going to more water parks.
The pool area at the Y is free for members. It costs $4 for Santee residents and $15 a person for those living outside of the area.
Here pretty much 2 to 3 times a week, I should say.
Santee resident Ahmed Abdul Rahim says he's lived in Oklahoma where it gets hotter, but the high temperatures here are still uncomfortable. Areas like Julian, Alpine, Ramona, and El Cajon are expected to be near 100 degrees through the weekend. Coastal areas will be cooler, but the National Weather Service says some records could be tied or broken.
Today is pretty much like a second day of the heat wave. It started July, so it's going to take another 2 months or so to cool down. So we're trying to stay cool and get the swimming lesson at the same time for the kids.
Forecasters say it's only going to get hotter as we move into the weekend, with the warmest days being Saturday through Monday. Now, here in Santee, it's about midday. It's around 95 degrees. It's pretty warm if you can't tell, but just steps behind me in the library, much cooler.
It feels a lot cooler and a lot nicer.
81-year-old Bob Guthrie was taking advantage of one of the county's cool zones. There's around 100 in the region. They're mostly at libraries and community centers. It's where people can go to escape the potentially dangerous temperatures. Some locations will have extended hours during the heat wave. Guthrie says these spaces are particularly important for seniors on fixed incomes.
Seniors need that place to go to stay cool, because they can't pay the high tax with San Diego Gas and Electric.
Staying hydrated and avoiding exercising or strenuous activities during the hottest parts of the day can reduce the risk of heat-related illness. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News. 300,000 people are expected to attend San Diego Pride this weekend. Events celebrating the LGBTQ+ community, they're taking place across the country amid growing threats of violence and an increasingly charged political environment. One way that's impacting Pride organizations' bottom lines, skyrocketing insurance costs. KPBS reporter Scott Rodd has the story.
San Diego Pride Week kicked off with SheFest on Saturday. It's a celebration of LGBTQ women and people who are non-binary and gender non-conforming. Live bands strutted the stage. Food trucks served up vegan and Indian fusion dishes, and hundreds of people checked out booths set up by vendors and community groups.
The vibe of SheFest is very much connecting with people.
Kathy Molig is Executive Director of Trans Family Support Services.
There's an entertainment factor, there's a community building factor, and there's an educational factor.
Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to attend the week-long Pride celebration in San Diego. But behind the scenes, the good vibes are tempered by a growing concern. Fernando Lopez is Executive Director of San Diego Pride.
What we're seeing right here, not just in San Diego, but all over the country, is a rise in anti-LGBT sentiment.
Here are just a few examples. Hate crimes based on sexual orientation in California increased nearly 30% last year, according to the State Department of Justice. Incidents against trans and gender nonconforming people jumped by more than 50%. Far-right groups have organized in-person confrontations at drag events across the country, and just last month, police arrested a man for an alleged bomb threat against Nashville's Pride event. All of this has gotten the attention of insurance providers.
I'm hearing from prides from LA, San Francisco, New York, and a ton of these smaller prides all over the country that the rise in insurance fees is untenable.
Insurance is required for pretty much any large event. It helps cover liabilities, like if someone sues after tripping over a curb, or if there's a mass shooting. San Diego Pride typically purchases an extra layer of insurance to cover any major incidents. Last year, the coverage cost them about $10,000. But this year, according to Lopez, it would have cost
$300,000. You can't budget for that. How could I budget for that year over year?
Pride events are being scrutinized in really unprecedented ways.
Bruce Smiley Califf is vice president and senior underwriter at Califf Insurance. The company specializes in coverage for large outdoor events, including dozens of Pride festivals nationwide. He says insurance costs are going up for all concerts and festivals for several reasons. Attendees are more likely to file lawsuits over minor incidents. Insurance markets are also overburdened in general due to a rise in costly claims tied to things like hurricanes and wildfires. And there's the growing threat of mass casualty events, like a shooting. That's a particular concern when it comes to Pride festivals.
Carriers are terrified by very, very large events, and especially ones that could be deemed a little bit more risky when it comes to acts of violence or perceived violence or threats.
These ballooning insurance costs are creating tough business decisions for LGBTQ organizations. San Diego Pride went with a more basic insurance plan this year because spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on extra insurance would have meant pulling funding from other essential programs. But that means they may be on the hook financially if a major incident happens. Sacramento's Pride Festival had to raise its ticket prices for the first time in 3 decades, in part because its event insurance more than doubled in recent years.
We got to a place where we couldn't just supplement all the additional costs with more sponsorship or more beverage sales. We had to raise the ticket prices.
David Heitzteman is CEO of the Sacramento LGBT Community Center, which organizes Sacramento Pride. He says safety and security is their top concern, but he fears increased entry fees could make the Pride Festival less accessible at a time when the LGBTQ community needs it most. Scott Rodd, KPBS News.
Of course, it's expensive to live here in San Diego, really no surprise there. But a new report has a big surprise when it comes to renting a place here. KPBS reporter John Carroll explains.
America's finest city features some of America's highest prices for homes, but a new report from online real estate company Zillow reveals San Diego is now among the most expensive places to rent. The headline from the new report, average rents here have now surpassed San Francisco. Zillow senior economist Orphe Duvungi says it all boils down to supply and demand.
Higher population growth creates new demand for housing, and a tight labor market will also tend to result in higher rents.
But higher than San Francisco? Rents there were nearly 30% higher than San Diego before the pandemic. And Duvungi says the pandemic definitely played a role in the rent reversal.
You saw a lot of people leaving San Francisco who had the ability to work remotely during the pandemic. So you have this pandemic shock, this effect of people leaving San Francisco to move to more affordable areas.
San Diego is now the third most expensive rental market in the country, though not by much. The average monthly rent here is now $3,175, just $7 more a month than the city by the bay.
Rent growth in San Diego actually peaked at 19% in June of 2022. It's now down to 5.3%. when compared to a peak of only 10% in San Francisco.
So where is rent more expensive than here? San Jose comes in second, and perhaps no surprise, it costs more to rent in New York City than anywhere else in these United States. As for California, Duvungi says rent and home prices will only fall so much unless we build more housing.
It's clear people still love California and want to live here. And so new construction has to be able to pick up the slack.
Looking ahead, there is some good news when it comes to rents. Zillow says they'll continue to inch downward as we get into the second half of the year. But when it's as expensive as it is to live here, that's cold comfort. John Carroll, KPBS News.
This week, the San Diego Union Tribune, it was sold to a hedge fund group. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado spoke to some of the paper's former employees about what this means for the newspaper staff and the San Diego community.
A San Diego institution has been sold again.
It's been a terrible day, to be honest. A lot of people are just stunned.
Former San Diego Union Tribune reporter Jerry McCormick says news of the sale hit UT journalists hard. They found out via email.
Imagine going to work every day, putting your heart and soul into a project, and then all of a sudden just having that ripped away from you. It's a very scary feeling.
McCormick, who's also a founding member of the San Diego Association of Black Journalists, says he knows what that feels like firsthand. He went through the same thing at the UT in 2009.
Away from your family, the sacrifices you've made, and then someone somewhere decided that your services are no longer needed.
McCormick says Dr. Pat Soon Xiong, who also bought the LA Times in 2018, sold the paper to Alden Global Capital, the hedge fund group buying papers across the country.
This company is known for gutting newspapers. And so the people of San Diego should be very concerned about what's happening to the Union Tribune right now.
It's something we've heard might happen for a really long time, and then to see it happen is just very disappointing.
Wendy Fry says she's heartbroken for her former colleagues.
It's pretty hard news to take.
Fry says less reporters means less accountability for public officials and fewer voices that will be heard, but she and those who work there fear most for the community.
Concern for the community beyond anything else. You know, these journalists, people go into this career because they care about their community and they want to share what's going on in it. They want to report it. And so, you know, really the loser here is going to be the San Diego community.
Fry got emotional when she thought about what the paper and the people who work there mean to her.
I'm so appreciative of the people who, you know, taught me how to do journalism there at the San Diego Union Tribune. And, you know, I hope everything turns out for the best.
McCormick advises reporters to reach out to professional associations that have resources to help. He adds they should also take the time to reinvent themselves, something they and every journalist will need to keep up with the fast-changing world of journalism. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
This week's KPBS Roundtable digs into the UT sale and really what it means for local journalism. You can listen online at kpbs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. The UT sale was one of our most popular stories this week over at kpbs.org. Another was a look into how and why insurance is now more difficult to get in California. And it's not just homeowners insurance anymore. Also, we checked in with Tijuana's All-Star team after they won the Mexican national title game. It earned them a spot in the Little League World Series. A lot of our online readers also checked out this story about a massive natural gas bill. A colder than normal winter and low gas supplies generated record high prices this past winter. But KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says few San Diego gas and electric customers got the bill surprise that came for one North County resident.
When 88-year-old Jack Babbitt opened his gas bill at the end of January, he was stunned. The charge for the month, $1,282.53.
First, I just thought there must be a mistake.
Doug Gastelum is Babbitt's grandson, and he's speaking on Jack's behalf.
Somebody typed in something wrong. There's just a mistake, and we'll get it corrected, and that'll be fine.
Babbitt is a military vet and widower. He lives alone in a trailer home that sits in a Fallbrook Valley just off Interstate 15. Babbitt's trailer has the typical lineup of gas-powered appliances: a gas stove, hot water heater, furnace, and a gas clothes dryer. The one thing Babbitt doesn't have is a smart meter.
This is in Fallbrook, and because of the topography and because of where they're located, they don't enjoy the ability to have a radio signal that sends their actual, what they use for gas on a everyday basis.
An SDG&E employee has to physically come out to Babbitt's house and take a reading to get a measurement of Babbitt's gas use. They say they do that every other month and use estimates in between. His bills indicate that didn't happen for 9 months before the huge January bill landed. And then the SDG&E bill said he used nearly 5 times the average home's natural gas consumption in January.
I'm going to have a look at these prior bills and see what I can learn about how this happened. And when I looked at them, I realized they were much more complicated than I imagined. And then I started noticing this business of the estimations of use.
Between June and December of last year, Babbitt was billed about $200. The bills indicate the charges were estimates, which were almost all less than $30 a month. SDG&E says that's not exactly right.
Because the bill says that there were 9 estimates in a row, but in reality, we went to Mr. Babbitt's home 2 or 3 days after we sent him the bill, and that happened several times. So while the bill identified an estimate, in reality, truthfully, we missed 1 estimate, and that was in November.
But when an actual reading was taken in January, gas use was sharply higher, meaning the monthly estimates were woefully low. And Babbitt got hit even harder by the cost of gas. SDG&E customers paid $5.11 a therm. That's more than double the December price, which the utility had already warned would be expensive.
Yeah, that is actually unimaginable how anybody could rack up a bill like that.
Dan Whitworth is a consumer advocate for San Diego's Utility Consumers Action Network. He says he's seen other cases where estimated readings led to oversized bills.
Meter readers have to go out and view the actual meter, and they are supposed to do that every 2 months. But the story San Diego Gas and Electric has been telling us is that they do not have adequate personnel to go out and do that, but they've been doing everything they can to train people so they can get people out there.
Whitworth says truing up the meter and bill after a long period of estimates means a customer can end up paying above baseline rates. The utility charges more when customers use more as a way to encourage conservation.
It always has a very, very anxiety-arousing effect on the customer to get a bill out of the blue so large.
Rising gas bills in the months leading up to January could have been a warning sign that everything was not okay. A malfunctioning heating duct discovered in April after that big January bill likely contributed to the unusually high gas consumption. That stoked Gastelum's frustration about the long run of estimated bills.
If there is a problem with your system, you will detect it sooner. So, so a lot of problems with just estimating these things month after month after month after month.
Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
KPBS spoke with San Diego Gas and Electric about Babbitt's situation to get some answers. You can find that part of our story on our website, kpbs.org, or you can watch it on our YouTube channel. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires San Diego to offer sign language interpreters for all of its programs. KPBS reporter Katie Heisen attended one child's swimming lesson to see the impact.
Like many public swimming pools, Claremont's is loud, with shrieks, splashing, and adults exercising patience.
I know you just said that to mess with me.
Research suggests that to 9-year-old Isabella Carroll, it might sound something like this.
And Bella, it's your turn.
She was born without certain cells in her ears that are needed to hear. Attached to the back of her neck is a waterproof cochlear implant. It allows her to hear some sound, like when her swimming coach calls.
And Bella, it's your turn.
Her sign language interpreter, Roy Hensley, communicates what her coach is explaining, sometimes pointing to her coach, who demonstrates kicks with his arms.
I'm able to get my arm all the way out.
A few years ago, we did try to give Bella swim lessons through a regular program that all the hearing world uses, and she really could not catch on.
Interpreter services are available for any of the city's programs, But you have to know they exist.
We didn't even know this was available, and we were trying to do swim lessons through, the public, and we weren't getting anywhere until her deaf friend's mom told us that we could ask for an interpreter.
Brown is hoping the city will expand its offerings.
I'm so grateful the city offers this, but if there was more different, a variety of sports that they would offer the interpreter to, I think it would be really great.
Bella practices Taekwondo, which is not yet offered by the city. She also plays volleyball.
Because for the deaf kids to be able to be on a team, interact with the hearing children, I think it's really important for their self-confidence that they can see they can be on a team and as good as the other teammates.
She wanted Bella, who surfs, to become a strong swimmer for safety.
She feels much more confident in the water, and now she's not afraid to go into the ocean by herself. Our neighbor has a pool, and she's willing just to jump right in, where before she'd get in and she'd just hold on to the edge. So I think and then I feel that sense of ability, confidence, has also expanded itself onto skateboarding, rollerblading. I can do this, and so it's been a huge boost.
She's a lot cooler than I was at her age.
I know, I should go.
Brown says that new confidence empowered her to approach people and make friends, too.
So she's included a lot more with the other kids at the playground.
To her interpreter, Hensley, it's about basic equity.
It's important because it's part of life. It's something a kid wants to do, so it should be accessible for them.
For Bella, it's even more straightforward. While Hensley interprets for her, she signs her reasons for swimming.
Because I need to learn and exercise my legs and become smart. I like the swimming, I just love it. I love it.
Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
School is still in session for students enrolled in summer classes, and for some, the curriculum is out of this world. KPBS education reporter MG Perez has more on a metaphysical mission to Mars.
3, 2, 1.
Getting off the ground is just the first stretch of the millions of miles it would take to make it to Mars. These are not real rockets, although their failure brings some very real feelings.
When it crashed, we saw that the part of this was burnt.
12-year-old Martin Torres and his classmate 13-year-old Tiny Tucker know the agony of defeat when it comes to rocket science.
I'm pretty sure we used the Elmer glue. We should have used the hot glue since it was stronger.
This rocket design team is one of dozens made up of San Diego Unified Middle School students spending 5 weeks in summer school. The lessons are embedded in science, technology, engineering, and math, with focus on planning a supply mission to a colony on Mars.
What I've heard is it's a red planet, it's dry, like a desert.
Luis Roboyar wants to be a professional soccer player someday. He's thinking about how that would work way out there.
It would be kind of weird because of the gravity, and the ball would go everywhere. When you kick it, it's just gonna go.
When we were creating our game, we were supposed to make this spaceship move.
Spaceships and rockets are critical to the Mars mission. These students are using a video game to design theirs, which gets you into outer space much easier and safer, too.
For me, the thought of going into space is kind of scary, but I would like to research many things in space, like planets and black holes and stuff.
Video games seem like a way to engage older students who didn't put a lot into school, and it seems that even those kids, when video games are on the table, they start getting into it.
You could create something and it won't always come out as planned, but that's how you fail and have trials and you learn better, so next time it'll be easier.
For Martine and Tiny, failure is not an option after learning their lesson.
We're gonna figure out how to do it perfectly to the last bit. We're gonna glue it correctly, and we're gonna launch it again.
Mission accomplished. MG Perez, KPBS News.
The historic Lafayette Hotel and Club reopened this week. That's after closing for major renovations last October. KPBS reporter Melissa May, she shows us all of the upgrades to this North Park landmark.
From the outside, the Lafayette Hotel and Club maintains its iconic tall white columns.
We were very intentional about respecting the history of this place and respecting what it does to the local community and the local culture here as well.
But as soon as you step inside,
we work with thousands of designers and architects and people to sort of really bring the beauty to this place alive.
The cost of this remodel? $31 million.
And the idea that you want to come into a space and actually be almost visually stimulated wherever you see.
Marquise Willis is the director of sales and marketing for the Lafayette.
Peer into a bit of a new age as well, but also understand that we want to be able to elevate the community and bring something really cool to North Park.
The Lafayette is the first hotel owned and developed by CH Projects. The hospitality group is known for its iconic restaurants, like Polite Provisions.
We've done really well in the restaurant space, and all of our spaces are very eclectic. They have a lot of opulence when it comes to the design of that. But the most important thing about the restaurant spaces is that it's something that gives back to the local community. And Lafayette being a part of the community for so long, almost 77 years, this right here just felt like it was home for us.
The lobby bar is the epicenter of the hotel, sitting between a 24-hour diner, retail shop, and of course, the historic pool.
We restored the pool, we did the tiling. We actually didn't touch it too much because this is one of the very instrumental focal points of the property. This pool was actually designed and built by the very first Tarzan, Johnny Weissmuller, and it was important that we sort of kept a little bit of his spirit in the pool as well.
While the rooms feature an eclectic mix of styles, including Victorian and Tudor designs, Willis describes the theme of the hotel.
It's community. I would probably say that's the theme. We create spaces so that people can actually come together and have a place that gives them a little bit of escapism, again, but also a staycation is good for the local community as well.
And if you're thinking about taking a staycation at the hotel, room rates start at $299 a night. Melissa May, KPBS News.
We hope you enjoyed this look at KPBS News this week. I'm Matt Hoffman. Thanks so much for joining us.